The government doesn't need to break your legs when it can convince you to never stand up on your own again. They don't need to take your strength all at once. They only need to teach you to fear everything, depend on everything, wait for permission for everything, until one day you wake up breathing, but no longer feel like the owner of your own life. They'll say this is an exaggeration. They'll say a 99-year-old man has become too suspicious, too bitter, too trapped in the past. But listen to Peter Walker for a few minutes, because I have seen strong men become frightened children in front of a screen. I have seen courageous women hand over their decisions to voices that did not even know their names. And I have seen good people call obedience security while their own souls slowly became smaller. If you feel tired, weak, confused, always waiting for someone to tell you what is right to think, maybe the problem is not your age. Maybe it is the fire inside you that they are trying to put out in silence. And today, I'm going to tell you how I kept that fire alive. Maybe you know this exhaustion better than you would like to admit. It does not arrive by kicking down the door. It arrives slowly, sitting in your living room while the television talks about danger, crisis, disease, war, rising prices, people losing everything. And you just sit there, motionless, with a cold cup in your hand, feeling that the world has become too big for an ordinary person to face. Then come the bills on the table, the pills in the cabinet, the passwords you no longer remember very well, the forms, the rules, the news, the warnings, the experts telling you how you should eat, sleep, vote, buy, think, and feel afraid. And without realizing it, you begin asking permission even to trust your own judgment. You look out the window and think, maybe I no longer know how to live alone in this world. But is that true? Or have they repeated that lie so many times that it started to sound like your own? I saw this happen to many people, decent people, hard-working people, people who raised children, endured winters, buried friends, held a marriage together, paid for a house, woke up early for 40 years, but in the end began to believe they were incapable of deciding anything without an outside voice telling them the way. And that is how weakness enters, not like a sudden illness, but like a polite visitor. First it asks for a chair, then it asks for space, then it starts running the entire house. The question is, when did you begin to distrust yourself so much? My name is Peter Walker. I am 99 years old, and I am not here to pretend that old age is easy. My knees complain when the weather changes. My hands no longer hold a cup with the same firmness as before, and sometimes I have to stop in the middle of the hallway to remember why I walked into that room. I am not made of iron. I never was, but I still wake up knowing who I am. I still look at bad news without giving away my peace for free. I still hear beautiful promises coming from people in suits and ask myself, in silence, what do they want from me this time? And maybe that is why some people called me stubborn, old-fashioned, hard to control. I have heard all of it. I heard it from neighbors, from rushed doctors, from impatient relatives, even from friends who thought it was easier to obey than to think. But there is a difference between being stubborn and protecting the last chair where your soul can still sit. When you live almost a century, you learn that not every extended hand wants to help. someone to guide you, someone to teach you to lower your head, someone to make you believe that strength is dangerous, that independence is selfish, that questioning is a sign of ignorance. And I did not keep my strength because I was smarter than everyone else. I kept it because I learned early to distrust comfort when it came with a hidden leash. But that lesson did not come from a book. It came from an afternoon I never forgot. I was 42 years old when I began to understand the trap. It was a cold afternoon in Ohio in the late 1960s, and I was working with a man named Edward Miller. Edward was truly strong, not one of those loud men who need to prove their courage with every sentence, but strong in the quiet way of a man who repaired his own roof, cared for his sick wife, and still showed up to work before everyone else. Back then, he used to say that a man needed to know how to do three things: take care of his own body, take care of his own home, and take care of his own mind. I thought that was too simple, until I realized the world was starting to teach the exact opposite. Little by little, Edward began repeating everything he heard on the radio, then on television, then in the newspapers. He no longer said, "I think." He said, "They said." He no longer decided. He waited for instructions. One day, during lunch, he looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Peter, maybe it's better to let smarter people decide these things for us." That sentence wounded me more than an insult, because it was not humility, it was surrender. It was a good man handing over the key to his own mind without realizing it. And that was when I saw it. No one had put chains around Edward's wrists. No one had invaded his home. No one had ripped his strength away by force. They had simply done something more efficient. They had convinced him that thinking for himself was too dangerous. That afternoon I walked home with my hands in my pockets and a certainty burning inside me. If I did not feed my own fireplace every day, someone would come offering me a warm blanket in exchange for my fire, and many people would accept it, believing they were being protected. Years later, I met a man named William Harris. If you looked at him from the outside, you would say William had won. A clean house, a new car, shirts always neatly pressed, retirement in order, children with degrees, a nice chair on the porch, and an American flag hanging near the door. He looked like the kind of man the world uses as an example. But there was something about him that made me sad. William no longer trusted himself with even the smallest decisions. He asked other people's opinions before changing doctors, buying food, talking to his own son, even deciding whether he should go outside on a sunny morning. He had comfort, but he had no command. He had security, but he had no peace. One day, sitting with me on the porch, he said quietly, "Peter, I did everything right. I worked, I obeyed, I paid. I didn't cause trouble. So why am I still afraid to live?" I did not answer right away, because that question was not only his, it belonged to an entire generation. People who gave their youth to be accepted, gave their courage to avoid criticism, gave their voice to avoid seeming difficult, and then were startled to discover they had grown old inside a life that no longer felt like their own. William was not weak by nature. That was what hurt me most. He became weak, little by little, like a good knife left out in the rain. First, he stopped disagreeing. Then he stopped trying. Then he began calling dependence prudence. And by the time he noticed, he no longer knew where other people's care ended and his own prison began. It was through William that I understood a hard truth. Comfort without courage becomes a padded cage, and a cage is still a cage, even when there is a soft armchair in the corner. There is a fireplace inside every human being. I'm not talking about the one made of stone, wood, and ashes in the living room of an old house. I'm talking about the other one, the one no one can see, but that keeps a man standing when the whole world is trying to convince him to kneel. That fireplace is made of discipline, memory, faith, courage, silence, and responsibility. And when it is burning, you may be old, tired, with pain in your bones. But there is still a part of you that cannot be sold. The problem is that the system knows this. It knows that a people with fire inside will not accept every order without asking questions. It knows that a person who thinks, works, takes care of the body, protects the family, and speaks to God in silence is not so easy to bend, so it does not try to put out that fireplace all at once. That would make you react. It throws small drops of water every day, a little fear in the morning, a little distraction in the afternoon, a little comfort at night. A piece of news to frighten you, a promise to calm you, a screen to hypnotize you, an excuse for you to abandon one more piece of yourself. And by the time you notice, you are no longer feeding the fire. You are only waiting for someone to tell you whether it is still warm. That is how I saw so many men and women lose their strength. Not because they grew old, but because they stopped putting wood into their own soul. They stopped walking. They stopped saying no. They stopped learning. They stopped trusting the inner voice that for years had guided their steps. I stayed strong because I did the opposite. Even when everything seemed easier if I obeyed in silence, I returned to my fireplace. I took care of the body I still had, the mind that still thought, the faith that still breathed, and the dignity that no one had the right to confiscate. Because when the inner fire goes out, anyone can give orders in the dark. The most dangerous enemy does not show up knocking on your door in uniform, shouting orders or saying he came to take your freedom. He shows up smiling. He shows up saying he wants to make your life easier, protect you from every risk, spare you from every responsibility, decide for you so you do not have to carry the weight of your own choices. And listen carefully. I am not talking about a party, a flag, or a campaign speech. That is too small. I am talking about an old, patient, polite machine that prefers people tired, frightened, and dependent, because a fearful person obeys faster. A confused person asks fewer questions. A person who does not trust himself will accept any leash as long as they call it care. They weaken you when they make rest look like laziness, discipline look like oppression, faith look like backwardness, family look like a burden, old age look like uselessness, and independent thought look like danger. Little by little they take the words out of your mouth and put ready-made words in their place. They take the silence out of your home and fill everything with noise. They take your courage and offer comfort as compensation. But here is the part you need to hear. That guilt you feel for wanting to think differently may not be yours. That fear of disappointing others, that terror of seeming difficult, that shame of trusting your own judgment, maybe all of it was planted in you over many years. And if it was planted, it can also be pulled out, because being strong after a certain age is not about dominating anyone. It is about no longer apologizing for still having an entire soul. For many years, I thought strength meant winning arguments, enduring pain in silence, waking up earlier than everyone else, and never showing doubt. But at 99, I understood that much of what people call strength is just pride wearing work clothes. True strength is quieter. It appears when you turn off the television before it steals your peace, when you walk even when you do not feel like it, when you say no without writing an entire speech to defend yourself. Strength is preparing your own food with gratitude, caring for the body that still carries you, saving money without selling your soul, hearing an opinion without handing over your mind, loving your family without allowing them to decide everything for you. Strength is sitting alone on a cold morning and still feeling that there is someone whole breathing inside. The government, the system, the culture of fear, they all prefer that you confuse strength with youth, muscle, or money. Because then, when those things begin to fade, you hand over the rest. But I learned differently. Strong is the one who still chooses. Strong is the one who still thinks. Strong is the one who protects his own fireplace when the whole world offers water in the name of safety. And maybe that is the cleanest rebellion still left to an old man, to keep belonging to himself. Today, at 99 years old, I am not telling you to live in anger, suspicious of everyone, or fighting shadows. I am saying something simpler. Stop giving your strength away every day to those who profit from your fear. Turn down the noise for a while. Walk if you can still walk. Take care of the body that still obeys you. Protect your mind the way you would protect the last candle burning on a long night. Do not wait for permission to think. Do not wait for applause to have discipline. Do not wait for the world to become honest before you recover your dignity. My strength did not come from never feeling fear. It came from not letting fear sit in the seat of command. That is how I kept my fireplace burning, by placing a little courage in it every day. So answer me honestly. What part of your soul are you still giving away in exchange for a false sense of security? If this message touched you, share it with someone who needs to recover their own strength before it is too late. Comment below which fire you want to reignite, and subscribe to the channel.